Check 1, 2. Well, good morning and welcome to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox. I'm your host, Frank Acom, and we are broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio here on Market Street in Corning. I'm so glad that you've joined us this morning. We've got a lot to cover from over the weekend. A little bit of everything here. First, we start with a comment from a viewer. Good morning, Frank. Well, hey, good morning. And happy President's Day. Well, thank you. I see Mr. Trump has the New York City mayor under his wing, as he gave him a great deal to erase his charges. If he helps ICE get illegals out, win-win. We're going to talk about that. That is becoming a quote-unquote controversy. So we'll be talking about that maybe a little bit later on in the program. First off, did you see that Trump attended the Daytona 500 off the, I guess you could say, piggybacking off of the Super Bowl? Trump was in attendance at the Daytona 500 at Daytona International Speedway in Florida. That was on Saturday, just 1 week after he attended Super Bowl 2025 at the Caesars Superdome in New Orleans, becoming the first sitting president to attend a Super Bowl. Trump, inside the black limousine dubbed the Beast, did a lap around the track along with the motorcade while delivering a message to the driver saying, "This is your favorite president." This is from a speaker in the limousine. "This is your favorite president. I'm a big fan. I'm a really big fan of you people that you do this. I don't know, but I just want you to be safe. You're talented people, and you're great people and great Americans. Have a good day, have a lot of fun, and I'll see you later." He also stopped to speak with Fox Sports, saying, "I think it's fantastic. It's great for the country. Our country is doing well again, and we have spirit all over the world." There's spirit again. We brought it back, and it's been less than 4 weeks. So you'll see what we could do in a little period of time. It's only going to get better. But this is very exciting. He also spoke with drivers, saying they have a lot of courage doing it. I see it, and I've been here. They have a lot of guts, as they would say. He traveled with several guests, including his son Eric, grandson Luke, Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy, and Interior Secretary Doug Burgum. From the roar of the engines on the track to the echo of the Star-Spangled Banner soaring through the stands, the Daytona 500 is a timeless tribute to the speed, strength, and unyielding spirit that makes America great. That spirit is what will fuel America's golden age. And if we harness it, the future is truly ours. So Donald Trump making the rounds of Daytona 500 yesterday. Also, since we're starting, I guess, with sports, did you see that the Canadians booed the national anthem again, but there was a lot of fights in hockey over the weekend. Team USA's 3-1 defeat of Canada at the Four Nations face-off. The highly anticipated game between North American neighbors and hockey rivals began with 3 fights in the first 9 seconds of regulation time. But first, before a single glove was dropped, the Canadian crowd at the Bell Center in Montreal did what they've been doing multiple times recently at NHL games, which is they booed the Star-Spangled Banner. American players, I'm going to try here, Matthew Tkachuk, Brady Tkachuk, and JT Miller decided to settle the insults with their fists. They were the first to drop the gloves. Next up, Matthew was, then Brady, called out Canada's Sam Bennett and handled business. So a lot of fights. The fighting subsided after the pugilistic extravaganza of the first 9 seconds. However, the hitting did not. Both sides battered each other on the boards. However, the Americans certainly had an advantage in physicality as well. Specifically, Team USA successfully brutalized the only Canadian to score in the game, Connor McDavid. The game marked the first time the U.S. and Canada met with their top teams on the ice since the 2016 World Cup of Hockey. It also snapped the America's losing streak to the northern neighbors and gave Team USA a spot in Thursday's four-nation face-off championship game. So again, USA defeated Canada 3-1 after the Canadians booed the national anthem. All right, we're going to go through a lot of things quickly here this morning, and then we're going to get into some nitty-gritty. I do have quite a few updates on New York. Maybe, I'm not going to dive too far into it, but maybe a few things here about former and disgraced Governor Andrew Cuomo and his potential run for mayor. Now, it almost is like he announced on Valentine's Day, but not officially. It's really quite confusing. We'll talk about that. But Netanyahu has vowed to finish the job against Iran with the support of Donald Trump. This coming from CNN. Netanyahu was speaking alongside U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio, who is visiting Israel in his first official trip to the region since assuming the role. Quote, over the last 16 months, Israel has dealt a mighty blow to Iran's terror axis. Under the strong leadership of President Trump, I have no doubt that we can and will finish the job, said Netanyahu. Rubio said that there could never be a nuclear Iran. It's important to constantly point that whether we talk about Hamas or we talk about Hezbollah, we talk about violence in the West Bank, or we talk about destabilization in Syria, or we talk about any of these issues, the militias in Iraq, they all have behind them one common theme, Iran. That must be addressed. U.S. intelligence agencies recently warned both the Biden and Trump administrations that Israel will likely attempt to strike facilities key to Iran's nuclear program this year, according to sources familiar with the assessments. Israel's willingness to use military force runs counter to President Trump's current desire for a peace deal with Iran. And the recent U.S. intelligence cautions that major strikes on Iranian nuclear sites could increase the risk of a wider war breaking out in the Middle East. Overall, Israel is also still pursuing the broader goal of causing regime change in Iran. One of the recent U.S. intelligence reports says the Israeli leader said he has a common strategy with Trump on Gaza and its future, vowing to open the gates of hell if all hostages were not released. Trump this month proposed the U.S. take over Gaza and displace Palestinians out of the devastated strip permanently, triggering a storm of protests. We're going to be talking about protests here a little bit later on as well. It may have shocked and surprised many, Rubio said, but what cannot continue is the same cycle where we repeat over and over and over again and wind up in the exact same place. Benjamin Netanyahu said, this didn't come as a surprise. We knew about it and discussed it beforehand, meaning the takeover of Gaza. Speaking to leaders of American Jewish organizations, Netanyahu said the plan was the only viable plan to enable a different future for the people of Gaza, for Israel, and for the region. Rubio's trip coincided with the U.S. sending a shipment of heavy bombs to Israel. The munitions were sent after Trump's administration last month lifted a hold on the deliveries, according to Israel's Minister of Defense. So there we are. There's an international update. We're going through a lot this morning. We are going to talk about the Trump administration. Been very busy, as we mentioned. Even on the weekends, there's a lot of breaking news. We're going to talk about the media's coverage from over the weekend, some real pushback on the Trump administration. We've also got a couple of pieces here about Democrats who are kind of lost in the wilderness, not knowing what to do, as they are powerless in Washington. And as we've seen, it's quite amazing. Thus far, every one of Trump's cabinet members have been confirmed. There's still a few to go, but for Robert F. Kennedy Jr. to get in there probably signals that there shouldn't be too much more quote-unquote controversy. So we'll talk about that as well. We've got a lot about the border. Oh, before we go to break, oh, look at all these comments and waves coming in. Thank you very much. Everybody's been talkative lately, and I really do appreciate it. There's a lot to discuss. What did you think of Trump's visit to the Daytona 500? What did you think about the Daytona 500 in general? Of course, I was right here on Big Fox. Breaking story from over the weekend, one that doesn't come as a surprise but worth mentioning. Vivek Ramaswamy has reportedly filed paperwork to run for governor of Ohio in the state's upcoming gubernatorial election, which is in 2026. Ramaswamy filed paperwork with the Ohio Secretary of State on Friday, indicating that he'll be running for governor of the state. The 39-year-old entrepreneur's campaign reportedly filed a designation of treasurer form, which is the official document a candidate must complete before the campaign begins spending or accepting any money. Ramaswamy is expected to officially make his announcement later this month. We know that this is the reason why he originally resigned, for a better word, lack of a better word, resigned from Doge. It's Vivek Ramaswamy. I'm hitting the road for a major announcement. I want to see you there, he teased on his recently launched website. The former presidential Republican primary candidate will kick off his bid for Ohio governor on February the 24th, just a few days, about a week from now, in his hometown of Cincinnati. On February 25th, Ramaswamy will be at the Glass City Center in Toledo and the local bar in the Cleveland suburb of Strongville. He is also set to be a keynote speaker at the 2025 Lucas County Lincoln Day dinner in, I'm going to try this, Maumee, Ohio, just southwest of Toledo. Talk of Ramaswamy running for Ohio governor ramped up after he parted ways with the Trump administration's Department of Government Efficiency just last month. At the time of the writing, Ohio Attorney General Dave Yost is the only other candidate currently vying for the Republican nomination in the state's 2026 gubernatorial race. So again, this is in 2026. So far, Ramaswamy's bid for governor has been endorsed by fellow Republicans Ohio State Treasurer Robert Sprague and Ohio Secretary of State Frank LaRose. Meanwhile, former Ohio Department of Health Director Amy Acton is the only candidate currently running in the state's gubernatorial race on the Democrat side. So we'll be keeping a close eye on the Ramaswamy. Well, first of all, the announcement coming later this month, but also his campaign for governor of Ohio. Now, there is a lot to cover when it comes to the media from over the weekend. We're probably going to dive into that. Quite a few New York issues to get to as well. And a few things here about Trump, but also a few things here about Biden and Kamala Harris. So stay with us. We're just getting warmed up on this Monday morning. President's Day, as a matter of fact, edition of Frankly Speaking. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
If you or a loved one regularly used hair relaxers or straighteners and were diagnosed with uterine, ovarian, or endometrial cancer, you may be entitled to significant financial compensation.
I've used hair relaxers for years. I had no idea they could cause cancer.
Chemical hair relaxers and straighteners have been linked to serious conditions, including several types of cancer. If you used hair relaxers and have been diagnosed with uterine, ovarian, or endometrial cancer, call us now. There's no fee unless we win your case. Call today.
Ever feel a spectator in your own life with chronic migraine? 15 or more headache days a month, each lasting 4 hours or more. Botox prevents headaches in adults with chronic migraine. In a survey, 91% of users wish they'd started sooner. So why wait? Talk to your doctor.
Botox effects may spread hours to weeks after injection, causing serious symptoms. Alert your doctor right away, as trouble swallowing, speaking, breathing, eye problems, or muscle weakness can be signs of a life-threatening condition. Those with these conditions before injection are at highest risk. Side effects may include allergic reactions like rash, breathing problems, dizziness, neck and injection site pain, and headache. Don't receive Botox if there's a skin infection. Tell your doctor your medical history, muscle or nerve conditions like ALS, myasthenia gravis, or Lambert-Eaton syndrome, and medicines like botulinum toxins, which may increase the risk of serious side effects.
Chronic migraine may still keep you from being there. Ask your doctor about Botox today. Learn how AbbVie can help you save.
Our son Brett to a glioblastoma. This was our last chance to show our community who he really was. Carpenters, Phillips, and Flint, they were so willing to create that ceremony however we wanted to do it. They could not have been more gracious.
You should consider them highly. You'll feel good about your thoughts and your decisions.
Visit carpentersphillipsflint.com to learn more about our family.
The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam, brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. Welcome back as we broadcast live from the Hesselson studio on Market Street here in Corning. I just saw reported, and I did not realize this, and I thought it was kind of interesting. Chevron, Shell, and BP are using Gulf of America now instead of Gulf of Mexico on their website and in their financial filings. I know there was some controversy as the AP has refused to use or standardize, if you will, the Gulf of America. Well, now Chevron, Shell, and BP are using Gulf of America instead of Gulf of Mexico. And on that, piggybacking off of that, Nissan CEO Makoto Uchida suggested President Trump's tariffs could force the car manufacturer to shift its production outside of Mexico. From Mexico to the U.S., we're exporting a significant number of cars this fiscal year. 320,000 units are reported or are exported from Mexico to the U.S. And if the high tariffs are imposed, we need to be ready for this. And maybe we could transfer the production of these models elsewhere if this is the decision. We will think about how we can make it a reality while monitoring the situation. The move would be a major blow to Mexico's auto production sector, as nearly 670,000 vehicles were made by Nissan in the country last year, with over 456,000 of those being exported. The outlet said Nissan ranks second in Mexico for those metrics after General Motors. White House counselor for Trade and Manufacturing, Pete Navarro, detailed the most potent weapons Trump has against inflation. We're expecting a large volume to the U.S. If there's a high tariff, this would have huge implications on our business, so we need to monitor this carefully. Trump's 25% tariffs on Mexico are currently on hold until at least March, following a conversation with Mexican's President Claudia Sheinbaum. Trump also argued that the primary goal of tariffs on the United States' southern neighbor is to promote border security. Speaking of border security, Border Czar Tom Homan has insisted it is responsible to ask the feds if AOC's webinar on invading ICE was crossing the line. We talked about this on Friday's program, where AOC is pushing ways to avoid ICE. Border Czar Tom Homan on Sunday insisted he was right to ask the feds if New York City Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez crossed the line by providing migrants with tips to dodge the law. Ocasio-Cortez's office last week hosted a webinar featuring a, quote, know your rights in case of ICE guide that encourages migrants not to open their doors to the feds if officers don't produce a warrant. Homan has said he wants clarity from the Justice Department on whether she was crossing the line with the event. I'm suggesting that I would ask the Department of Justice, where's that line on law enforcement impediment? That's a broad statute, Homan said on CNN's State of the Union. You could call it know your rights all you want. I think it's more about how they evade law enforcement not to get arrested, even though there's a federal warrant for your arrest, how they evade that, rather than know your rights. Now, it is important to note that AOC did not participate in the webinar. She just promoted it. Homan revealed Friday to Fox News host Laura Ingraham that he had sent an email to the Deputy Attorney General about AOC's office promoting the event. Is that impeding our law enforcement efforts? If so, what are we going to do about it? Maybe AOC is going to be in trouble now. Impediment is impediment, in my opinion. During the webinar, an expert from the Immigration Defense Project claimed that her team has very, very rarely seen instances in which U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement agents actually had judicial warrants. The expert further alleged that ICE officials usually lean on ruses or intimidation to try to trick people into doing or saying things that they can interpret as consent to enter a private space. The guide advised migrants to remain silent during questioning. Homan underscored to CNN that if the feds had access to the man who murdered Lake and Riley in New York, he would never made it to Georgia to kill a woman. We know that whole story. The White House border czar stressed that he was not accusing AOC of flouting the law, but said he wanted to know where that line is. Now, I'm not saying that's illegal. What I'm saying is I asked the Attorney General, at what point is it impending and at what point is it not impending? CNN moderator Dana Bash took note of AOC's defense that the webinar was meant to remind people the law of the land passed by congressional statute. Holman shot back, I've done this since 1984. I forgot more about the immigration law than AOC will ever know. I think it's a responsible thing to do as the border czar of the United States to make sure the men and women ICE understand what they can and cannot do. Now, AOC previously mocked Holman's outreach to the DOJ over her webinar. She did not respond to a request for comment by the New York Post. Also, speaking of the border, brazen Canadian coyotes are smuggling migrants across the northern border. Now, I know Congressman Nick Langworthy has been very outspoken on this about securing the northern border. We always talk about the southern border is where the main focus is, but the northern border, this group of coyotes even advertising on TikTok. According to the New York Post, smugglers are brazenly using TikTok to advertise their human trafficking services across the Canadian-U.S. border, undercutting the Great White North's position as it tries to hammer out a critical deal with the U.S. on tariffs and security. For close to a year, the Canadian coyotes, who largely target Indian nationals, promise a hassle-free trip to the States for as much as $5,000, with new border crossing accounts popping up every time others are removed from the platform. The posts often feature a U.S. flag waving over a wooded northern border, set to Indian music, urging wannabe border crossers to direct message them for more details. Payment after reach, reads one post, while others assure 100% safety. The competition could be cutthroat. $4,000 cheapest in the market, one post read. Northern crossings have fallen from an average of around 4,500 Indian nationals nabbed each month before Trump took office to 2,900 since, according to U.S. Customs and Border Protection data. But the Post has identified at least half a dozen of these coyote accounts still operating on TikTok. The Post contacted one smuggler who said it would cost $4,500 for one person to get across into the Empire State from Montreal. When you're ready to go, send me your ID, the coyote said. The trips leave from either Montreal, Brampton, outside Toronto, and Surrey, outside Vancouver. They deliver migrants to upstate New York or Washington State. To New York, the journey includes a 2-hour car ride and a 25-minute trek through the forest through an unguarded stretch of land where the migrants are given a map to guide them across the border outside an official checkpoint in Champlain and Moores, New York. Up to 5 migrants are taken at a time for a group walk, the coyote said, and like legitimate businesses, the accounts often feature testimonials from satisfied customers bragging about how easy and even comfortable the journey was. The service was outstanding. We have come through very easily, said one user. And they have the photos that you can see for yourself at the New York Post. For smugglers, the Canada-U.S. border has long been viewed as an easy hustle. Last year, the Post spoke to residents living outside the border who testified to how often they see illegals crossing. It's the longest land border in the world, and unlike the U.S.-Mexico border, it's largely unguarded outside of official crossing points since much of it is wilderness. They call it a border, but you can cross anytime you want. It's really an undefended border. Nobody is basically on either side. For smugglers, Indian nationals make up a niche market, but a thriving one. In 2024, Indians made up almost a quarter of those apprehended crossing the United States northern border illegally, by far the largest group according to U.S. Customs and Border Protection data. Each day, more than 100 Indian nationals on average are caught by agents at the Canadian-U.S. border. The number has tripled in the last 2 years. Most often, they enter Canada on student visas. Last year, the country's Department of Immigration estimated 50,000 students were let in but never showed up to school. 20,000 of them were from India. Representative Jeff Van Drew from New Jersey saying this type of behavior is indicative of the culture of incompetence and just how brazen drug trafficking and human smuggling has become under the previous administration. Well, I've got news for these criminals. There's a new sheriff in town. Crossing at the southern border have virtually slowed to a halt since Trump took office. So far in February, about 359 illegal migrants per day have been caught across the entire southern border, down more than 90% from the same time last year, according to leaked Custom and Border Patrol data. Trump threatened earlier this month to impose a 25% tariff on Canada's exports to the U.S., saying it will not they're not doing enough, to police its side of the border. The U.S. agreed to stall the tariffs for 30 days after Justin Trudeau promised to push ahead with a $1.3 billion border security plan that includes 10,000 Border Patrol agents and 24/7 surveillance with the use of drones and helicopters. But the TikTok coyotes throw a monkey wrench into the negotiation. In the absence of Canadian border security, it is difficult to imagine the trade and other relations between the two neighbors will continue as normal. Now, Representative Nicole Malatakis called for a federal probe after being told about the hustle by the New York Post. The Department of Justice should investigate how these apps are being utilized for nefarious activity and get cooperation from the companies that operate them. Canadian's Minister of Public Safety, David McGutney, insisted illegal migrants would be nabbed. Crossing between ports of entry is illegal and very dangerous, said a spokesperson. All right, we've got a couple other. Oh, here we go. How late am I running? I'm running a little bit late, aren't I? San Diego migrant shelter closes after no new arrivals since Trump took office, and over 100 employees have been laid off. A San Diego migrant shelter is closing its doors and laying off more than 100 employees because of funding and policy changes under the Trump administration. The Jewish Family Service of San Diego, which has operated a regional migrant shelter for over 6 years, announced it will close its facility and lay off 115 employees due to, quote, changes in federal funding and policy. Jewish Family Service of San Diego is working to meet the evolving needs of the community in response to recent and anticipated federal policy change. The non-governmental organization said they have not received new asylum-seeking families or individuals since the CBP One Phone app went down on January 20th, and that was that controversial app that the Biden administration created. The app, which ultimately allowed immigrants to be paroled into the U.S., was created during the first Trump administration to assist with scheduling cargo inspections, and then, of course, it was used for more illegal immigration under the Biden administration. It expanded in 2023 to allow migrants to make an appointment at a port of entry to be allowed in, initially due to an exception from the Title 42 public health order. Since May, they had the potential to be paroled into the U.S. as part of the Biden administration's expansion of lawful pathways. At the end of December, more than 936,500 individuals had made appointments to be paroled through the app, according to Customs and Border Protection. With migrants no longer able to use the CBP One application, the San Diego Rapid Response Network, migrant shelter services operated by JFS, has not received new asylum-seeking families and individuals released from short-term federal custody into our care. Due to these changes in federal funding and policy, the SDRRN migrant shelter services will be paused until there is better understanding of the future community needs. So there you go. All right, we got a lot more to discuss. I know I'm running a little bit late. Keep those comments, keep those waves coming in. We're just getting warmed up here on the President's Day edition of Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox, stay with us.
Frankly Speaking Roof Cam is brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact Boss Security for all your business and home security needs.
Hard water makes it hard to keep your home looking like the work of art you've always envisioned it would be. Culligan softeners reduce hard water buildup and your cleaning time, transforming every drop, every splash, every rinse into the fine art of a long-lasting clean. With a Culligan water softener, revel in the breathtaking beauty of your home, just the way you've always pictured it. Culligan, water you love.
I have 2 diabetes, but I manage it well. It's a little pill with a big story to tell. I take once daily Jardians at each day start. As time went on, it was easy to see I'm lowering my A1C.
And for adults with type 2 diabetes and known heart disease, Jardians can lower the risk of cardiovascular death too.
Serious side effects include increased ketones in blood or urine, which can be fatal. Stop Jardians and call your doctor right away if you have nausea, vomiting, stomach pain, tiredness, trouble breathing, or increased ketones. Jardians may cause dehydration that can suddenly worsen kidney function and make you feel dizzy, lightheaded, or weak upon standing. Genital yeast infections in men and women, urinary tract infections, low blood sugar, or a rare life-threatening bacterial infection between and around the anus and genitals can occur. Call your doctor right away if you have fever or feel weak or tired and pain, tenderness, swelling, or redness in the genital area. Don't use if allergic to Jardiance. Stop use if you have a serious allergic reaction. Call your doctor if you have rash, swelling, difficulty breathing, or swallowing. You may have increased risk for lower limb loss. Call your doctor right away if you have new pain or tenderness, sores, ulcers, or infection in your legs or feet.
Jardiance is really swell, the little pill with a big story to tell.
The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. Welcome back as we broadcast live from the Hesselson studio. A couple comments from viewers. First up, why are illegals entitled to our constitutional rights? I'm not sure what that is specifically in reference to, but yeah, that's a fair question. Comment from Mark, I've been to the St. Lawrence River many a times to fish. The border runs right through it. I wonder how many illegals, are getting smuggled across it. Great question. It sounds like the northern border should really be a focus, and I'm sure the Trump administration is focusing on the northern border. We've talked about it numerous times in the past with Congressman Nick Langworthy, who's been very outspoken on border security. Hey, I said I would be mentioning protests. Did you hear that protests are set to take place today on President's Day? Protests are set to take place in several major cities across the U.S. on the President's Day holiday, according to activists. These demonstrators are being organized by the 50501 movement, which stands for 50 Protests, 50 States, One Movement. The protests are a response to what organizers describe as the anti-democratic and illegal actions of the Trump administration. This marks the second nationwide protest by the group, following an event that was held on February the 5th. The protests follow a series of executive orders signed by President Trump, including actions led by billionaire Elon Musk, which have been criticized for their aims to diminish the role of federal government. Organizers like Sidney Wilson out of Pittsburgh tell NPR that holding the protests on a day dedicated to celebrating U.S. presidents is the ideal moment. Quote, we are going out and protesting because we are concerned by our current president's actions. We figured it was a nice little punch. Okay. Now, this all started on Reddit. The first nationwide protest was held on February 5th. I don't believe that was really as successful as they had hoped it to be. During these protests, participants called for Trump's impeachment, yes, and removal from office, demanding an investigation into Elon Musk, and sought the reinstatement of diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives that have been rescinded through executive order. For the next wave of protests set to take place today at state capitals again and in Washington, D.C., Wilson says they expect a similar turnout, if not larger than the previous one. We are still very much calling for the removal of Elon Musk. We find it very concerning that there is a non-government official that has the access that he does, and would like to see the strengthening of anti-discrimination initiatives. The group is also advocating for an investigation into Trump's presidential appointees, especially those connected to Project 2025, such as Russell Voigt, the architect of the conservative agenda. They plan on holding more protests in the future. The protests are being coordinated with Political Revolution, a group founded in 2016 after Bernie Sanders' presidential campaign. The 5051 group consists of volunteers and leaders who, quote, have been on the front lines of justice, marching in support of Black Lives Matter, women's rights, LGBTQ advocacy, and disability rights. The group says it's not affiliated with any political party, and they describe Monday's protest as a call to action. Now, also, that is hitting close to home. It doesn't sound like it's necessarily with that group. But just to show you that we talk about all sides here on the program, there is going to be a President's Day protest locally. It's called Resisting Fascism. This is what the poster says. This is a nonviolent and peaceful demonstration. Bring signs, banners, acoustic instruments, and your friends. It is being held today at Corning Centerway Square starting at noon. So again, it's the We the People President's Day protest, Resist Fascism in Corning Centerway Square today starting at noon. All right. Now, speaking of the protesters who already believe the president should be impeached, Representative Jamie Raskin, in his typical fashion, claimed on CBS's Face the Nation yesterday that the Trump administration's attack on the Department of Justice could be, you guessed it, impeachable. As we had one viewer comment already about the Department of Justice. I'm not going to read his whole quote because it's quite lengthy. But he is suggesting that it is impeachable what the president has done. So in the Oval Office, well, let me take a step back. The dominant objective of this administration is corruption and lawlessness, said Raskin. The first thing they did was they sacked 17 inspector generals. Those are the people who are actually corruption fighters within the departments and the agencies. These are the people who ferreted out $91 billion worth of waste, fraud, and abuse in the government. So it is impeachable that the attack on the Department of Justice by the Trump administration could be, quote unquote, impeachable. And then, of course, over the weekend, you may have seen constant criticism of a constitutional crisis under Trump. Now they're upset that he has channeled, if you will, Napoleon with a tweet that he sent out, or a truth post, I should say. He said, "He who saves his country does not violate any law," Trump claimed in a social media post. Trump has dramatically reimagined the scope of his executive power at the start of his second term, according to CNN, issuing scores of executive actions. The efforts have been bolstered by the administration's implicit confidence in its capacity to defend itself from legal challenges, as Trump, in part, sought to remake the judicial during his first term. Still, Trump's extraordinary attempts to expand the power of the executive branch have hit legal roadblocks in recent days. Dozens of court cases have swiftly challenged Trump's policies and prompted judges to put on hold some of the implementation to determine whether the moves are legal. The lawsuits include challenges to stopping federal foreign aid, firing federal workers, ending government programs, and even closing agencies altogether. So Trump appears, says CNN, to channel Napoleon in his vision for executive law. He who saves his country does not violate the law. Now, his post on Saturday night is likely to have echoes in court. The government attorneys defending his policy decisions against more than 60 lawsuits are arguing to protect and expand executive power. The court cases so far have prompted lawyers from the Justice Department to argue that Trump's power as president shouldn't be limited within the executive branch and shouldn't be tied up in the federal judiciary, especially as he makes decisions around the federal workforce and spending. So there you go. A couple of quick things. We're going to talk more about the Sunday talk shows and specifically what Margaret Brennan had to say over the weekend. That's when we come back. Got some waves, got some comments coming in. Let's take a short break, and we will be right back with Frankly Speaking on this President's Day. So stay with us.
I told myself I was okay with my moderate to severe rheumatoid arthritis symptoms.
With my psoriatic arthritis symptoms. But just okay isn't okay.
And I was done settling.
If you still have symptoms after trying a TNF blocker like Humira or Enbrel, Rinvoq works differently. Rinvoq is a once-daily pill that can rapidly relieve joint pain, stiffness, and swelling as fast as 2 weeks for some. And even at the 3-year mark, many people felt this relief. Rinvoq can stop joint damage and in PSA can leave skin clear or almost clear.
Rinvoq can lower ability to fight infections. Before treatment, test for TB and do blood work. Serious infections, blood clots, some fatal. Cancers including lymphoma and skin, serious allergic reactions, GI tears, death, heart attack, and stroke occurred. CV event risk increases in age 50 plus with a heart disease risk factor. Tell your doctor if you've had these events: infection, Hep B or C, smoked, are pregnant, or planning. Don't take if allergic or have an infection.
Done settling?
Ask your rheumatologist for Rinvoq.
And take back what's yours.
Beat the dark days of winter and have a vacation from taxation with the Hesselson's Hot Tub. What better way to start or end every day than with hot water therapy and your very own Hesselson's Hot Tub? With every spot purchase, Hesselson's guarantees great customer satisfaction and the best service team in the area. Plus, with Hesselson's Vacation from Taxation sales event, free steps, free cover lifter, free music, and 0% interest-free financing. Ask about Hesselson's chemical auto ship program and save even more. Stop in today and see why after 70 years it's still fun to poke in the corners at Hesselson's.
Power up, America. The Ford President's Day sales event is here. Save on the vehicles that will take you places, give you a surge of productivity, and a new sense of freedom. So head to your local Ford store, because it's time to get in the driver's seat. A special offer for Jeep owners. Right now, you can lease a Ford Bronco for just $269 a month for 24 months, only at your local Ford.
The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam, brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. Welcome back as we broadcast live from the Hesselson studio. A couple of comments from viewers. Good morning, and Happy President's Day. Well, happy President's Day to you as well. Just a general statement pertaining to the left crying and suing on behalf of illegals being denied constitutional rights. Why being here illegally, they should not be protected by these rights. Thank you very much for the comments. Did you see on yesterday's, on the Sunday shows on CBS, Margaret Brennan was rebuked after she claimed that free speech was, quote, weaponized in Germany to carry out the Holocaust during a back and forth with Secretary of State Marco Rubio. The two sparred over Vice President J.D. Vance's fiery speech at the Munich Security Conference. Did you see that speech? What a great job. I don't think anybody was expecting that speech. Again, I think showing how good of a pick, yet again, that J.D. Vance was as Vice President. Just a wonderful speech. He slammed European leaders for censorship and said the threats from within posed the greatest danger to the security of the West rather than Russia or China. Rubio was quick to defend the vice president after Brennan asked about the remarks that irked U.S. allies and Vance's reported meeting with a far-right German leader ahead of the country's chancellor's election. Brennan saying, why would our allies, or this is Rubio, excuse me, why would our allies or anybody be irritated by free speech and by someone giving their opinion? We are, after all, democracies. And so I think if anyone's angry about the words, they don't have to agree with him, but to be angry about it, I think actually makes his point. Brennan then offered a historically dubious response saying, well, he was standing in a country where free speech was weaponized to conduct a genocide, and he met with the head of a political party that has far-right views and some historic ties to extremist groups. The context of what was changing the tone of it, and you know that. What is it with the media and this new lecturing that they've been doing? You know that, right? So condescending, and Margaret Brennan has been very condescending in the past. She clearly cannot even hide her disdain for Republicans. We've seen in the past with her interviews of Vance and with Tom Cotton and who's the other one that? Oh yeah, Mike Johnson. When her just anger and hate. So this idea that they keep lecturing all their guests, not all their guests, I shouldn't say that, the Republican guests, which will, you know that, right? We saw that when she was interviewing J.D. Vance as well. This, you know. Rubio quickly cut in and objected. So maybe not knowing that, right? No, I have to agree with you. Free speech was used to conduct a genocide. The genocide was conducted by an authoritarian Nazi regime that happened to also be genocidal because they hated Jews and they hated minorities. And they hated those that they had a list of people they hated, but primarily the Jews. There was no free speech in Nazi Germany. There was none, Rubio added. I wish you would have said, you know that, right? This is a crazy exchange. Does the media really think the Holocaust was caused by free speech? Is what he asked later on Twitter. White House Communications Director Stephen Chung said Margaret Brennan of CBS News is going through some bizarre episode as she makes disgusting excuses for Nazis and the Holocaust. So again, saying, well, he was standing in a country where free speech was weaponized to conduct a genocide, and he met with the head of a political party that has far-right views and some historic ties to extreme groups. The context of that was changing the tone of it, and you know that. All right. Also, CNN's Caitlin Collins. How am I doing on time? Good. CNN's Caitlin Collins, just to show you how really corrupt the media has become, used X, Twitter, to promote the defense fund for Luigi Mangione, the alleged left-wing assassin who shot and killed United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson in cold blood. Specifically, we know about the story of Mangione, so we don't need to go through all that. But since the shooting, this alleged left-wing assassin has become somewhat of a sex symbol and cherished martyr for the cause of government-run healthcare among much of the Democrat Party and political left. Democrats adore this guy because they're convinced he heroically assassinated his CEO, and some even said they felt joy. Now, Collins, who hosts CNN's primetime show, frequently represents CNN in the Trump White House and is known to the public primarily as the face at CNN. She tweeted out Saturday, Luigi Mangione's legal defense team has launched a new website today. She then added a link to the site, which is basically a fundraising apparatus for his defense. Now think of that. And this is what we're dealing with the media. All right, we got some comments coming in. I got to take a short break. Stay with us. Oh, let's go through. Well, we'll read the comments when we come back from break. Keep those comments coming in. Keep the waves coming in. I hope that you have a wonderful President's Day. There is so much to cover, even after, like we talk about on the program so often, even after the weekend, when normally it would be slow, not under the Trump administration. We have numerous stories about Trump. We are going to talk about probably a little bit more here about the media and their bias, but we're also going to talk a couple New York State issues probably as we near the 7 o'clock hour. Also, yeah, we have quite a few New York State issues. We're also going to talk about a little bit of what Doge is doing and what's going on behind the scenes. And if we get a chance, a couple things here, even about the Biden administration and Kamala Harris. So stay with us. We will be right back with Frankly Speaking here at WYDC TV, Big Fox.
In the last 18 months, Bath Planet has given away 3 dream bathroom makeovers, and now it's your turn. It's our absolute pleasure to announce Dream Bathroom Giveaway 4. On March 3rd, one local family is going to get a dream bathroom makeover for free. Whether you want a tub to lounge or a walk-in shower for accessibility, Bath Planet is excited to give away our 4th free bathroom makeover. Enter now by scanning the QR code or stopping by either of our 2 locations.
I invite you to discover what makes our school community so special, including the fact that everything, top-notch education, housing, healthcare, food, clothing, technology, and much more is provided to our students at no cost to our families. This is thanks to the generosity of our founders, chocolate maker Milton S. Hershey and his wife, Catherine.
Anyone, anywhere can record crimes as they happen, and we're going to watch them right here.
He just took his car.
With cameras everywhere, you can run, but you can't hide. Watch iCrime.
The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam, brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. Welcome back as we broadcast live from the Hesselson studio. Comment from a viewer. Mark says, Trump's first term, he said he would drain the swamp of corrupt government, and in his second term, he's doing it. And now they want to start impeachment proceedings. What's next? Yeah, it's no surprise. Jamie Raskins of the world, they're going to call for impeachment. Really, they have been from day one. They really hate cutting back the size of government. There's actually a piece that ties into that, asking the question, who will stand up to Trump at high noon? And the author of this piece goes on, it was in the New York Times. For some reason, they mention high noon, but then talk about the movie Shane, which, by the way, did you know that John Wayne thought that high noon was, quote, the most un-American thing I've ever seen in my whole life? And that's why he created Rio Bravo in response. He thought it was the most un-American movie of all time, High Noon. So that kind of ironic when you hear this piece. So it's disorienting to have the men running America, Donald Trump and Elon Musk, relish bullying people who can't fight back and blurring lines between good and bad. They should be working for us, but we suspect they're working for themselves. Trump and Musk see government workers as losers for devoting themselves to public service rather than chasing dollars. Do you believe that many of the people that were fired or were given that severance, do you believe they were actually doing it for public service? We've learned of the waste, fraud, and corruption in so many government entities that line falls a little flat. But Axios called their aggressive approach masculine maximalism. Trump and Musk view masculinity quite similarly. Tough guy language, macho actions, irrelevant, crude, and often unmoved by emotionalism, empathy, or restraint. The two are freezing programs, firing federal workers en masse, ripping apart the government, and decimating agencies with no precision, transparency, or decency. So the New York Times thinks this is outraging you, that this is upsetting you, that we're actually cutting back fraud, corruption, waste in our federal government, that these huge bureaucratic institutions are being axed, and you are, I guess, supposed to be upset over that? Republicans are cowering, and Democrats are frozen like the townsfolks and westerns when the bad guy takes over. Trump's mugshot even hangs outside the Oval Office like an Old West wanted dead or alive poster, and Musk, giving a news conference with his son on his shoulders, mirrored Palin's with his black outfit, including a dark MAGA hat. It's bizarre to have the White House accusing judges who paused Trump's moves for a constitutional review of provoking a constitutional crisis. There it is. We got there. We wonder when it'd be a constitutional crisis. Trump and Elon are turning our values upside down. The president demands loyalty, even if he's asking his followers and pawns to do something illicit. Loyalty outweighs legality. He immediately purged federal prosecutors who worked on the January 6 related cases. He ordered a McCarthy-esque probe of thousands of FBI agents and who investigated a bloody sack of the U.S. Capitol that endangered police officers and lawmakers. So now the agents are the scofflaws, and the scofflaw is the dispenser of justice. Trump is even making it easier for American companies to bribe foreign governments, something that's not exactly an American ideal. They go on to talk about RFK Jr. as our Secretary of Health and Human Services. As hard as that is to believe, is hailed by Trump as a health savior when he's a dire threat to America's children with his dismissal of vaccines. Most of the world sees Zelensky as a hero and Vladimir Putin as a villain. I feel queasy when I hear President Trump talking dotingly about Putin. I'm sure that dogs skulk away from Putin as he walks by. But Putin has made it his business to seduce the president, so the easily flattered Trump sees Zelensky as the inevitable loser in the bid to keep Ukraine intact. Anyway, I hope as President Trump and Elon Musk exercise their masculine maximism, they remember the words of John Wayne in the 1972 Western, The Cowboys. A big mouth doesn't make a big man. So who will step up to Trump at high noon, according to the New York Times? When we come back, we're going to wrap up this hour. We're also going to talk about some New York State issues. I know we're covering a lot this morning. That's what happens after the weekend. There's a lot that we missed, but a lot that we've covered already. I think we packed a lot in for a little under an hour on the program. It is 6:50, so let's take that break. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox.
Attention, Elmeron may lead to vision loss.
If you have suffered vision problems after taking Elmeron to treat bladder pain, call the Hearn Law Firm. Elmeron may be responsible for your vision problems, and you may deserve compensation for your injuries.
If you took Elmeron and now have vision problems, call the Hearn Law Firm at 888-308-3866 right now. You could find out if you qualify in less than 2 minutes. Call 888-308-3866 for your free case review.
Let's beat the dark days of winter and have a vacation from taxation with the Hustlesense Hot Tub. What better way to start or end every day than with hot water therapy and your very own Hustlesense Hot Tub? With every spot purchase, Hustlesense guarantees great customer satisfaction and the best service team in the area. Plus, with Hustlesense Vacation from Taxation sales event, free steps, free cover lifter, free music, and 0% interest-free financing. Ask about Hustlesense Chemical Auto Ship program and save even more. Stop in today and see why after 70 years it's still fun to poke in the corners at Hustlesense.
The Bix website is here now. WYDCTV.com. Local and national news that keeps you informed and involved. WYDCTV.com. Today's weather, up to date and in your town. WYDCTV.com. Sports news, local events, and health stories that affect you. WYDCTV.com. The Big Fox website. Your news here now. WYDCTV.com.
The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. Welcome back as we broadcast live from the Hesselson studio here on Marcus Street in Corning. We do have a couple New York State issues. I may save that for the top of the hour. We've got some other comments that we'll read here in just a little bit. I wanted to mention this. We'll wrap up the hour on two Biden and Harris stories. It was reported late on Saturday, or excuse me, early on Saturday, that they looked into the numbers, and it was the Republican National Committee looked into the numbers, and that Joe Biden took more time off than any other United States president in modern history, spending 577 of his 1,463 days in office, or, if you want to look at it maybe more simply, 39% of his presidency on vacation. The average American who gets 11 paid vacation days a year would have to work 52 years to rack up as much downtime as Biden scored in his 4 years in office. Representative Nicole Maltakis, said, considering how awful his misguided policies were and the various crises that he created, from the border to inflation, imagine the damage he could have done if he worked every day. I'm not sure if we should be mad or thankful he worked so little. Biden's relaxation ratio outstripped the previous vacationer-in-chief, which was George H.W. Bush, who spent 37% of his presidency away from the White House. Biden's out-of-office ratio far surpassed time off taken by Trump, who spent 26% of his first term away from Washington, D.C. Ronald Reagan and Barack Obama vacationed for just 11% of their two-term presidencies, and workhorse Jimmy Carter took only 79 days of breaks, amounting to 5% of his single term in office. We don't have to go through all of this, but we know that Biden was very often seen at the beach. He then spent most of the next 2 months vacationing after the election, California's wine region, Camp David, and his other home in Wilmington. 23 straight days off from August 8th to September 2nd. Wow. All right, so there you go. The numbers, 577 vacation days over 4 years, tops modern presidents. Also, did you see that Jen Psaki over the weekend slammed Kamala? And we've talked about this in the past on the program. There's a lot of Democrats that are upset that Kamala Harris would have kind of hitched her wagon, if you will, to Liz Cheney, because Democrats have been told how bad the Cheneys were from the beginning, that they're evil, incarnate. And then all of a sudden they were supposed to be excited that Kamala Harris received the endorsement of Liz Cheney. And I highlighted on Friday how I talked to, I didn't say anecdotal, but I talked to so many people that ended up voting for Trump, not because they necessarily like Trump, but they liked that RFK Jr. and Tulsi Gabbard were a part of the campaign, realizing that it wasn't about Republican or Democrat. It was about making America great again, the whole policy of the Trump administration, where you have Harris taking the opposite and losing people in her party by campaigning with Liz Cheney. I don't think closing the campaign with a message about fighting democracy with a former Republican member of Congress was the right strategy, said Jen Psaki. Psaki lauded Cheney, who headed the House's January 6th committee and endorsed Harris for president, as heroic, and conceded that she's not the reason the Democrats lost in 2024, but still faulted Democrats for failing to articulate a message that spoke to the majority of everyday Americans. Quote, I think we were speaking in a manner that was so academic, an ivory tower. It wasn't talking about a lot of the things people actually care about. I think they voted in some ways against protection of status quo and the disconnected academic ivory tower elite language that is too often used by Democrats. One of my takeaways after the election was cross authoritarianism and oligarchy out of every script. Nobody talks this way. That's a good point. Then you have, where was it? During the podcast, Stewart lamented the Democrats have become the party of the government, the party of the status quo, and institutions. So Biden, former Biden official Jen Psaki, slams Kamala for campaigning with Liz Cheney, but then saying it's not Liz Cheney's fault, but that they were using this elitist language. And we've talked about it in the past, this idea that they would lecture you about you struggling to pay your bills, saying that you just don't get it, how great the economy is, and then they laugh and mock you because you haven't read some bureaucratic handbook that shows that the economy is actually quote unquote good. It's really good. And now on the backside of that coin, they are saying, well, Trump inherited such a good economy, and he's going to take credit for it. And at the same time, talking about inflation for the first time ever, saying that he didn't fix it after day one. Well, we're going to talk about those issues and much more. I just thought that was kind of some interesting takes on the Democrats. We do have a couple other stories about the Democrats in general kind of being lost in the wilderness right now because they don't have any power. We're going to talk about that and how a lot of people are pointing to Hakeem Jeffries. It's kind of his responsibility to right the ship of the Democrat Party. We're going to talk about that. But first, when we come back in hour number 2, we are going to discuss some New York State issues, kind of speaking to what we talked about a lot last week, which were the really disturbing numbers locally for many of our school districts and the graduation rate. We talked about it kind of startling, especially how high the school budgets have become. Well, we've got something somewhat on that here from the New York Post, a couple other things coming out from New York when we come back. So stay with us. This is, Frankly Speaking, here on WYDC TV, Big Fox, hour number 2, mere moments away on this President's Day edition of Frankly Speaking.
At John G. Ullman & Associates, our clients come first. As a fiduciary, we build personalized plans rooted in our shared ethics and values.
And you've been doing this for 45 years?
Yes, our in-house team creates custom plans built for you and your family.
We like the idea of a relationship that lasts.
That's what we're all about, helping you and your family build and protect wealth for generations. John G. Ullman & Associates, here for everything your money touches.
This was our last chance to show who our son was. I can't say enough about pre-planning. When you are in those moments, you are not thinking clearly.
We showed up for the remembrance, and we walked in, and we just, wow.
It was arranged perfectly. Yeah. I certainly could not have done that in that moment. So to have those pre-conversations, it's really important.
Visit carpentersphillipsflint.com to learn more about our family-owned funeral homes.
Anyone, anywhere can record crimes as they happen, and we're going to watch them right here.
He just took his car.
And thank you, Jack. Keep those comments coming in. Oh, was the music still playing on that? I apologize. Let me read those comments again. Okay. My apologies. Let's go back and read those comments again. Jack, the sticker guy, says the impeachment rhetoric from the left is comical and that it sounds like they are talking about themselves. Very much agree there. And then Mark says, in response to Biden's time off, instead of where's Waldo, how about where's Biden? Thank you very much. Okay, let's talk about a couple of New York State issues. Troubling news keeps piling up for New York's public schools. Kids keep performing poorly on standardized testing, fueling a race to the exits by parents seeking better opportunities. And we've talked in the past where they're now looking at even ending Regents exams. But it's led to school enrollments well below capacity. Yet these schools remain open, draining dollars without boosting achievement. For taxpayers and parents seeking better schools, it's pure madness. Take the just-released National Assessment of Educational Progress, aka the nation's report card, if you will. It finds just 23% of 8th graders in the city are proficient in math and 29% in reading. Only a third of fourth graders are proficient in math, and even fewer, 28%, in reading. Statewide, the best result was just 37% of fourth graders are proficient in math. 37%. With such dismal results, it's not surprising that New York's public schools are also losing students at some of the fastest rates in the nation. Data released by the National Center for Educational Statistics show the state lost 5.9% of its students between the fall of 2019 and 2023, more than all but 4 other states. It lost 3.6 percentage points more students than, let me try that again. It lost 3.6 percentage points more students than did neighboring Pennsylvania, for instance, and even 0.7 points more than California. Over 80% of New York's school districts are still below their pre-pandemic enrollment levels. Given New York's demographic trends, including fewer kindergartners, enrollment, and lower birth rates, student counts are unlikely to rebound in upcoming years. As such, lawmakers and taxpayers must closely monitor whether school districts are closing undercapacity schools when necessary. New Reason Foundation research shows New York's public school districts closed fewer schools after the pandemic and only returned to their pre-COVID closure levels last school year. Despite a loss of 215,000 students, only 104 traditional public schools were closed between 2017 and 2018 and 2023-2024 school years. In 2024, New York closed just 16 public schools statewide. The city closed none. Other states with far smaller populations closed nearly as many, and some even more. Among the 15 states examined, for example, Colorado, with less than a third of New York's population, closed 26 public schools in 2024, even though it lost a lower percentage of its students than New York did. Iowa shuttered 12 schools last year, and South Dakota closed 11. So it's clear New York is not properly adjusting to its lower enrollment levels. New York districts have been able to delay closures because the legislature regularly approves massive spending increases. The latest federal data shows New York schools receive $35,902 in per student revenue, more than any other state. And we talked about the dismal graduation rates at some of our local schools, even though, of course, we see how much of an increase they ask every single year for the budget. Leading the nation's largest school districts, New York City schools receive $44,790 per student. The Empire Center reports state aid alone doubled from $7,264 to $14,304 per pupil over the last 12 years. These large spending hikes make it easier for districts to avoid making tough decisions about school closures. State lawmakers even maintained a hold harmless funding policy so school districts would not receive less funding than the prior year, even if they lost a large number of kids. Georgetown University's Education Lab estimates that districts with under-enrolled schools can save about 4% a year by closing one of every 15 schools. School closures are politically fraught, of course. Shuttering schools often requires navigating through difficult bureaucratic processes and facing intense backlash from teachers, unions, and parents. So it may be understandable that state and local leaders drag their feet to right-size under-enrolled schools. Yet, as disruptive and politically difficult as it may be, delaying a school's closure is financially unsustainable when hundreds of thousands of students have been lost. Instead of keeping significantly undercapacity schools afloat with billions of dollars in additional funding year after year, local and state leaders must restore some fiscal sanity to New York's public education system by consolidating under-enrolled public schools. So again, $35,902 per student. Keep that in mind. Also in New York, Liz Joy is going to be running in the 21st Congressional District. That's Elise Stefanik's. I know we've talked a lot about this because of kind of the threats made by some Democrat politicians that they would delay the special election in Elise Stefanik's district, trying to kind of be the fly in the ointment for Trump to be make that majority in the House even tighter. Well, Elizabeth, or Liz Joy, is looking to push for America First policies, closely aligned with President Donald J. Trump, as she pursues the Republican nomination in New York's 21st Congressional District. A special election will be held this year at some point to replace Representative Elise Stefanik, who's expected to be confirmed as Trump's ambassador to the United Nations. In an interview, Joy said she has a history of supporting issues that have risen to the forefront of this year's campaign: border security and illegal immigration. I've always been an outspoken advocate for America First policies. I have done that since 2020, my campaign, as well as 2022. I'm a huge supporter of border security. Now, Joy has run 2 campaigns to unseat Capital Region Representative Paul Tonka in the Democrat-favored district. Joy carried 44.9% of the vote in 2022 and 38% in 2020. She said then and now that the U.S. needs to focus on protecting its borders and dedicating more resources to preventing illegal immigration or illegal immigrants from crossing the borders, and should additionally crack down on international human trafficking and the trafficking of children. So there you are. Just an update as we've talked so much about Elise Stefanik's election, or her seat, I should say, as she looks to become the ambassador to the UN. Now, speaking of elections, he nearly ended Cuomo's career. Now he says his ex-rival should be mayor. Carl McCall, whose 2002 primary race with Cuomo became a racially charged clash, is urging the former governor to run for mayor of New York City. In an open letter, Mr. McCall did not mention the current office holder, Mayor Eric Adams, by name, but he said the head-spinning series of events surrounding the Justice Department's move to drop federal corruption charges against Mr. Adams had called into question his independence from President Trump and necessitated new leadership. Quote, New York cannot be represented by someone whose loyalty to the city is compromised. I have never publicly urged a candidate to run for office, but I have never before felt it so necessary to use my voice. For those reasons, I urge Governor Andrew Cuomo to run for mayor of the city of New York, and I offer my full support. Now, there's obviously been a lot of talks about Governor Cuomo, former Governor Cuomo, running for mayor. Nothing has been officially announced as far as I'm aware. But this is going to be interesting. We're not going to talk about everything with Adams. But coming as a little bit of a surprise, also an Asian group, tired of far-left Democrats, urge Andrew Cuomo to run for mayor, the most common-sense candidate. A citywide group representing Asian Americans is pushing for ex-Governor Andrew Cuomo to run for mayor because they think the Democrat Party has swung too far to the left. So they're suggesting that he isn't too far to the left. Interesting. The Asian Wave Alliance told the New York Post it's encouraging a Cuomo candidacy after members had an extensive Zoom meeting with the former thrice-elected governor. Andrew Cuomo would probably be the most common-sense candidate in the Democratic primary, the president of the group said. The group's leaders are deeply connected to the city's growing ethnic Chinese population in the outer boroughs of Brooklyn, Queens, and Staten Island, as well as Manhattan. AWA said it's discussed numerous issues with Cuomo during the February 5th virtual meeting, including homelessness and migrant shelters, public safety and other quality of life issues, preserving and expanding merit-based specialized high schools and gifted and talented programs, and traffic issues such as congestion pricing and rogue e-bike scooter cyclists. Quote, in these challenging times, we need leaders who have a record of proven experience, accomplishments, and have a genuine commitment to their constituents, which include Asian New Yorkers. For these reasons, we strongly urge Governor Cuomo to enter the Democrat primary for mayor. Residents in the city's large Asian precincts have shifted right in recent election cycles, with many voting for Republicans Curtis Sliwa for mayor in 2021 and Lee Zeldin for governor in 2022, amid a backlash against disorder and disagreement with Democrats' education policies. Well, also there, if you look at public safety, obviously Lee Zeldin ran with very tough talk on public safety. So 2 major endorsements for former Governor Andrew Cuomo to run for mayor. Also, since we're just covering a little bit of everything in New York, U.S. Representative Claudia Tenney. You may have met her. She's got a little bit, I think, of Stu Benners and a little bit of Chemung. I can't remember her district, but she was at the Tri-County Republican dinner before the election. Well, she has introduced a bill that will make June 14th a new federal holiday that would be known as Trump's birthday and Flag Day. Now, Trump was born on June 14th, hence the day. June 14th is already a holiday known as Flag Day, but it's not a federal holiday. Flag Day celebrates the anniversary of the adoption of the Stars and Stripes as the official U.S. flag in 1777. Claudia Tenney, who represents the 24th Congressional District, compared Trump to President George Washington. Quote, no modern president has been more pivotal for our country than Donald J. Trump. As both our 45th and 47th president, he is the most consequential president in modern American history, leading our country at a time of great international and domestic turmoil. From brokering the historic Abraham Accords to championing the largest tax relief package in American history, his impact on the nation is undeniable. Just as George Washington's birthday is codified as a federal holiday, this bill will add Trump's birthday to the list, recognizing him as the founder of America's golden age. Tenney said she wants to pass Trump's birthday and Flag Day Holiday Establishment Act before 2026, when America celebrates the 250th anniversary of its independence. Quote, by designating Trump's birthday and Flag Day as a federal holiday, we can ensure President Trump's contributions to American greatness and the importance of the American flag are forever enshrined into law. There you go. So Claudia Tenney pushing a bill, as we talked, last week about Donald Trump on Mount Rushmore. Now we have Claudia Tenney pushing a bill to introduce Trump's birthday as a federal holiday. Your thoughts on that? We got to take a short break. Stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox.
I have type 2 diabetes, but I manage it well. It's a little pill with a big story to tell. I take once daily Jardians at each day start. As time went on, it was easy to see I'm lowering my A1C.
And for adults with type 2 diabetes and known heart disease, Jardians can lower the risk of cardiovascular death too.
Serious side effects include increased ketones in blood or urine, which can be fatal. Stop Jardians and call your doctor right away if you have nausea, vomiting, stomach pain, tiredness, trouble breathing, or increased ketones. Jardians may cause dehydration that can suddenly worsen kidney function and make you feel dizzy, lightheaded, or weak upon standing. Genital yeast infections in men and women, urinary tract infections, low blood sugar, or a rare life-threatening bacterial infection between and around the anus and genitals can occur. Call your doctor right away if you have fever or feel weak or tired, and pain, tenderness, swelling, or redness in the genital area. Don't use if allergic to Jardians. Stop use if you have a serious allergic reaction. Call your doctor if you have rash, swelling, difficulty breathing, or swallowing. You may have increased risk for lower limb loss. Call your doctor right away if you have new pain or tenderness, sores, ulcers, or infection in your legs or feet.
Jardians is really swell, the little pill with a big story to tell.
Like the dark days of winter and have a vacation from taxation with the Hustlesense Hot Tub. What better way to start or end every day than with hot water therapy and your very own Hustlesense Hot Tub? With every spot purchase, Hustlesense guarantees great customer satisfaction and the best service team in the area. Plus, with Hustlesense Vacation from Taxation sales event, free steps, free cover lifter, free music, and 0% interest-free financing. Ask about Hustlesense Chemical Auto Ship program and save even more. Stop in today and see why after 70 years it's still fun to poke in the corners at Hustlesense.
Every day, Judge Mathis presides.
Don't you ever form your mouth to talk to me like that.
Is another day when someone gets what they deserve.
What's wrong with you?
Mathis Court with Judge Mathis.
The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact Boss Security today for all your business and home security needs. Welcome back as we broadcast live from the Hesselson studio. Many people pointing out that they think it's a joke that Cuomo would be seen as the common sense candidate. That's what that one group that endorsed him said. Yes, because if you look at what he did during COVID, I think it was the most disastrous decision perhaps ever made by an elected official, but specifically during COVID. And it led to the death of thousands of nursing home patients, and he was so arrogant and cocky about it, still lying about it to this day. So I would agree with the viewers that are saying that. Another viewer says, Frank, do you think the city of Elmira should address the homeless problem before they lose more bridges and buildings? They do have a shiny new $4 million clock, though. Yes, I do think it should be addressed, just like in general, public safety not being taken serious by many of our leaders. So I do think they should have the discussion. I know they've had some discussions on it. I'm not sure where that is headed, though, because obviously I think this is in reference, must be to the fire that you mentioned on Friday that we brought up on this program. Or I think it was actually on Thursday. Might be speculating on what happened there. But yes, obviously should address the homeless problem. And not just in Elmira, but in our communities in general. It's something that we've talked about with many officials on this program. It is a real epidemic of homelessness in New York State. Next up, Frank, What was the protest on Market Street, or did I misunderstand? Is this anti-Trump? Yes, it is very much anti-Trump. The protest is today, and it's Resist Fascism. It's a nonviolent and peaceful demonstration. They ask you to bring signs, banners, acoustic instruments, and your friends. It is being held today in Corning Centerway Square at noon. Okay, comment from a different viewer. Biden will be known as the dash between the line 45 and 47. Yes, that's about all. You're right. That's about all of his legacy. All right. Here we go. I think Trump, this is Mark, I think Trump and Flag Day should be the same day. I have my Trump flag all ready to go. Well, yes, it would be the same day. I think that's why Claudia Tenney's pushing it on Flag Day to make it a federal holiday and Trump's birthday. Now, the Trump administration wants the Supreme Court to let the firing of whistleblower agency head of the whistleblower agency head proceed. The Trump administration wants the Supreme Court to permit the firing of the head of the federal agency dedicated to protecting whistleblowers, according to documents obtained Sunday that would mark the first appeal to the justices since Donald Trump took office. The emergency appeal is a start of what will probably be a steady stream from lawyers for the Republican president and his administration seeking to undo lower court rulings that have slowed his second-term agenda. The Justice Department's filing, obtained by the Associated Press, asks the conservative majority court to lift a judge's court order temporarily reinstating Hampton Dellinger as the leader of the Office of Special Counsel. Dellinger had argued that the law says he can only be dismissed for problems with the performance of his job, none of which are cited in the email dismissing him. The petition came hours after divided appeals court panel refused on procedural grounds to lift the order, which was filed Wednesday and expires on February the 26th. Also, Trump administration has removed over 400 Department of Homeland Security employees in the ongoing purge. A total of 405 employees have been removed at the DHS in an ongoing workforce purge taking place at federal agencies and departments, a government official told ABC News. The bulk of the cuts have occurred at the Federal Emergency Management Agency, yes, FEMA, with more than 200 employees removed, as well as the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, where 130 workers were terminated. Meanwhile, almost 50 employees were cut from the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services, while the DHS Science and Technology saw 10 workers removed, according to ABC. 12 members of the Coast Guard who worked on diversity, equity, and inclusion were reportedly affected by the changes by being offered the opportunity to support border security efforts at the southern U.S. border. Currently, all these employees who are based in Washington have been placed on administrative leave. Quote, under President Trump's leadership, we are making sweeping cuts and reforms across the federal government to eliminate erroneous waste and incompetence that has been happening for decades at the expense of the American taxpayer, a DHS spokesperson told ABC News. Today's Department of Homeland Security personnel action will result in roughly $50 million in savings for the American taxpayer and incalculable value towards accountability and cutting red tape. DHS component leads identified non-mission critical personnel and probation status. We are actively identifying other wasteful positions and offices that do not fulfill DHS's mission. Now, an alarming report has showed, we're going through a lot. I got to take a short break. Comment from a viewer. Can you tell me who's organizing and promoting the Resist Fascism on Market Street? I don't have an answer for you on that. Sorry. It doesn't give any info about who or what the organization is, and I don't have my email, that specific email up to see what it says specifically, so I apologize over that, but no clear name on the poster. All right, let's take a short break. When we come back, a lot more to talk about when it comes to the Trump administration. We'll talk a little bit more about Doge, some other issues as well, so stay with us. What did you think of J.D. Vance's speech, by the way? I thought that he did a fantastic job. Not necessarily expected what he said, but nonetheless very necessary. So keep those comments coming in. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox.
Want to know why it's hard to stop a train? It's how we've invented products that reinvented our world. It's how we test as hard as the elements do. It's how we run.
Aaron's Heating and Air Conditioning in Corning is now offering residential plumbing services. A local, veteran-owned and operated company with over 25 years experience. you can trust the experts at Aaron's Heating and Air Conditioning.
I'm Grace. I'm Ida, and I lived in California. Timmy was just a puppy when I moved in. He's a emotional support animal. I had Missy, who is 15 years old and blind. Likes the people, he likes to greet all the people. All the employees are happy to see him. I feel that my pets are very welcome here. I feel very welcome here. I think it's great.
It's a new season of Sherry.
Having a good time has always been my #1 goal. I tend to get crazy. At my age, I should not be jumping up and down like that. And if you don't know what I mean, ask your mama. The young ones, y'all like, we don't know what you're talking about. But I promise you, in 30 years, you will.
It's the best time in daytime.
Weekdays at 2 p.m. on Big Fox.
And Missy face off in
Why can't we watch DuckTales? Because we don't learn anything.
Book Smarts versus Street Smarts.
Is it working? Are you feeling motivated? Very.
It's the battle of twins.
Life is so confusing. I always hoped it would be easier for me when I grew up. It's gonna be all right. You were faking. Bazinga.
Young Sheldon.
Weeknights at 6:30 on Big.
The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. Welcome back as we broadcast live from the Hesselson studio here on Market Street in Corning. The federal government is racing toward a fiscal cliff, with a new report citing a mind-numbing $838 billion cash shortfall just for the first 4 months of the fiscal year. Yet Democrats are losing their minds over Team Trump's efforts to trim fat and waste. Per the nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office, the $838 billion hole is a whopping 15% higher than last year's October through January gap. Some of the jumps reflect timing shifts for certain payments, but even adjusting for that, this year's hole still runs to $750 billion. Last month, the CBO projected a nearly $2 trillion in overspending this year, about 6.2% of the gross domestic product versus just 3.8% on average over the past 50 years. That would be added to Uncle Sam's $36 trillion in IOUs. In just a few years, the nation's debt-to-GDP ratio will exceed its World War II peak. Interest on the debt alone now tops military spending. Yet for decades, Washington has done nothing to curb the runaway spending that fuels the debt. Indeed, Democrats have blocked even modest attempts to slow the spending growth. Enter Donald Trump, Elon Musk, and Doge, and they're looking to get serious, finally, about D.C.'s spending addiction. They aim to trim the federal headcount, roll back foreign aid and other handouts, maybe scrap the Department of Education, all of which has Democrats in a tizzy. Democrat congressmen have called for a war to stop the Trump team. Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer told fellow Democrats of plans to push back against Trump through investigations, litigation, legislation, and messaging. Senator Andy Kim, a Democrat from New Jersey, warned Republicans not to count on any Democrats to pass a budget and avert a government shutdown in March unless Trump puts Doge down. Any effort to defund programs important to everyday Americans must be choked off in the upcoming government funding bill, if not sooner, said Hakeem Jeffries. Just how much red ink do Schumer, Kim, Jeffries, and company think is acceptable? When was the last time they pushed for getting a grip on spending? Know this: if you keep blocking every attempt to restore spending sanity, the economic bloodshed will be on your hands, and you may pay an even bigger price at the polls than you did in November. That's the New York Post. Now, Hakeem Jeffries said a GOP budget is a non-starter. Every single Democrat will oppose it. Republicans have consistently shut down the government in the past, and it would be no surprise if they do just that this time around. As Republican President, Republican House, and the Republican Senate, they have a responsibility to make sure the government remains open and can function. As Democrats, with respect to any spending agreement, our view, our test is whether that spending agreement meets the needs of the American people in terms of their health, their safety, our national security, and certainly the economic well-being of everyday Americans. Rosa DeLauro, who is our top Democrat on the Appropriations Committee. She's in our conversations with her Republican colleagues in the House, as well as our Republican and Democrat colleagues in the Senate. We'll see how that unfolds over the next few weeks, but we are going to make sure that any agreement that is ultimately signed off on has to be one that meets the needs of the American people and has to be implemented fully in compliance with the law. What we have been clear about is this budget that is working its way through the House of Representatives is a non-starter. Every single Democrat opposed it a few days ago, and I believe it'll continue to be our position because it's out of control. Now, Tim Kaine, if you recall, Tim Kaine ran with Hillary Clinton as her VP. He was on Fox News Sunday, and he said that the House and Senate Republicans are having a hard time facing a lot of confusion during the negotiations on the federal budget. Here are two recent headlines. Well, I'm not going to go through what host Shannon Bream said, but Kaine said, I never use it as a threat. I would like the fact that Donald Trump is shutting government down as we speak. I don't like the fact that Donald Trump is shutting government down as we speak. You know, he says, I want to shut down the Department of Education, shrink USAID staff down to 250 people. That is a shutdown unauthorized by Congress and against the law. I don't like that, and I don't think we should be contemplating shutting down. Look, the Republicans, as you point out, have had all three levers. They've got the White House and they have both houses. They got to figure out a budget deal. We could have done one last year, but after the November election, they said, well, let's wait until after 2025 when we have all the levers and we'll do a budget deal ourselves. So far, you can see there's a lot of confusion between the House Republicans and the Senate Republicans. We know where this is going. It's tax cuts for the wealthiest is going to be coming very, very soon. We know that in the budget committee this week, but they're having a hard time getting on the same page. Now, Elon Musk is calling for or encouraging a crackdown when it comes to Fort Knox. And now we've heard a lot of problems about Fort Knox in the past. Elon Musk, the world's richest man, got encouragement Sunday to bring his cost-cutting department of government efficiency, DOGE, into one of the most secure places in the world, Fort Knox. Senator Rand Paul called for a review of the vault's massive gold reserves, worth an estimated $425 billion based on market rates. In response to the tech mogul's musings about the stash, Musk drew attention to a user who asked him to take a look inside Fort Knox just to make sure that the 4,580 tons of U.S. gold is there. Musk replied to, surely it's reviewed at least every year. That's when Rand Paul tweeted, nope, let's do it, referring to the Army installation south of Louisville. The Kentucky Senator's father, former Representative Ron Paul, a big gold bug, had previously pressed government officials for greater transparency on the country's reserves. It's unclear the last time the faculty underwent a comprehensive audit, as the vaults were totally off limits for decades. The first tour of the facility came in 1974 when journalists and a congressional delegation were allowed in following claims that the stores had been looted. So we're going to take a look at, DOGE is going to take a look at Fort Knox. The vaults were opened again in 2017 during the Trump administration for Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin to view them. Since at least the 1970s, Fort Knox has been plagued by conspiracy theories that the piles of gold supposedly held don't exist. Former Representative Paul's attempt to get inside in 2010 even included legislation that would see the fort audited, using similar language to what his son is now employing. My attitude is just let's find out what's there. When Mnuchin visited in 2017, bringing along Mitch McConnell, the gold stores they saw were intact. So there you are. Elon Musk encouraged to crack open Fort Knox and audit the $425 billion gold reserves inside, and Rand Paul wants to help. Now, the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, HUD, Secretary Scott Turner announced a new Department of Government Efficiency task force on Thursday to eliminate waste, fraud, and abuse at the federal agency. DOGE revealed that $1.9 billion in HUD money had been recovered as of Friday, saying the funds were misplaced during the Biden administration and were earmarked for the administration of financial services, but were no longer needed. $1.9 billion. So all of these really staggering numbers that we're hearing so much about, we would never know about if it weren't for DOGE doing the research. DOGE said it worked with Turner to release the funds, and they're now available for use by the U.S. Department of Treasury. Turner said HUD launched its own DOGE task force to review how the agency is spending taxpayer money. HUD employees will lead the task force with a mission to maximize their budget and efficiency. HUD will be detailed and deliberate about every dollar spent to serve rural, tribal, and urban communities. Thanks to President Trump's leadership, we are no longer in business as usual posture, and the DOGE task force will play a critical role in helping to identify and eliminate waste, fraud, and abuse, and ultimately better serve the American people. Turner said he established the task force to comply with President Trump's executive order to maximize government efficiency and productivity. The HUD-DOGE task force will work to ensure all programs, processes, and personnel are working together to advance the purpose of the department. So you're starting to see kind of the domino effect in all of this with Trump, the original moves by DOGE. Now, Turner said during his announcement Thursday that the DOGE task force has already identified over $260 million in savings. We have already identified over $260 million in savings, and we have more to accomplish. As Elon Musk and DOGE comb their way through federal bureaucracy, some agencies are conducting their own investigations to meet DOGE halfway. Administrator for the EPA, of course, Lee Zeldin, former gubernatorial candidate, announced on Thursday he had canceled a $50 million environmental justice grant. I canceled a $50 million grant to an organization called Climate Justice Alliance. They say that climate justice runs through a free Palestine. I think that the American taxpayer wouldn't want $50 million going to this left-wing advocacy group. It's canceled, he tweeted. Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth is also committed to cooperating with DOGE to cut wasteful spending at the Department of Defense. We will partner with them. It's long overdue. The Defense Department got a huge budget, but it needs to be responsible, he told Fox. So $1.9 billion in HUD money, misplaced is the term, by the Biden administration. This is what DOGE revealed on X. $1.9 billion of HUD money was just recovered after being misplaced during the Biden administration due to a broken process. These funds were earmarked for the administration of financial services, but were no longer needed. Secretary Turner and DOGE worked together to fix the issue and de-obligated the funds that are now available for use by the Treasury. So there's a quick update. We're going to tell you about the kind of the protest, if you will, the backlash against Elon Musk. Of course, we were talking about the protest, the one in Corning, but throughout the country today for President's Day against Trump and Musk. There's other ways that people are protesting. We'll get to that when we come back. So stay with us. This is, Frankly Speaking, here on WYDC TV, Big Fox.
Want to know why it's hard to stop a train? It's how we've invented products that reinvented our world. It's how we test as hard as the elements do. It's how we run.
Aaron's Heating and Air Conditioning in Corning is now offering residential plumbing services. A local, veteran-owned and operated company with over 25 years experience. You can trust the experts at Aaron's Heating and Air Conditioning.
I'm Grace. I'm Ida, and I lived in California. Timmy was just a puppy when I moved in. He's a emotional support animal. I had Missy, who is 15 years old and blind. Likes the people, he likes to greet all the people. All the employees are happy to see him. I feel that my pets are very welcome here. I feel very welcome here. I think it's great.
It's a new season of Sherry.
Having a good time has always been my #1 goal. I tend to get crazy. At my age, I should not be jumping up and down like that. And if you don't know what I mean, ask your mama. The young ones, y'all like, we don't know what you're talking about. But I promise you, in 30 years, you will.
It's the best time in daytime.
Weekdays at 2 p.m. on Big Fox.
And Missy face off in
Why can't we watch DuckTales? Because we don't learn anything.
Book Smarts versus Street Smarts.
Is it working? Are you feeling motivated? Very.
It's the battle of twins.
Life is so confusing. I always hoped it would be easier for me when I grew up. It's gonna be all right. You were faking. Bazinga.
Young Sheldon.
Weeknights at 6:30 on Big.
The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. Welcome back as we broadcast live from the Hesselson's studio. There we go. Comment from a viewer. Good morning. Well, good morning. Did you invite us to wear our MAGA hats and do the Trump dance at noon? It's kind of cold. No, that's not what I was doing. I'll just tying in a local story to a national story. But I would like to see the Trump dance. So speaking of protests, according to Rick Harris at the Telegraph, he traded his aging Mercedes for a Tesla Model 3, and he has regretted it ever since. The 51-year-old computer programmer said it was a bit like having a spaceship. It saved me an absolute fortune of fuel. The only thing it had done has gone through his tires and popping up the windscreen washer fluid. When he acquired the car on a company scheme, Harris did not consider the politics of Tesla's billionaire owner too closely. Elon Musk just seemed like a really interesting person. Everything he was doing seemed really positive. 4.5 years later, the car's lease is expiring, and despite it being one of the best vehicles he has ever driven, Harris has no intention of keeping it. It's a brand that, from my point of view, has become toxic. It would be like buying a VW Beetle in 1939 Germany. Wow, the rhetoric there. Harris is not alone for much of its history. Driving a Tesla granted its owner an environmental halo, as well as a sense of being on the technology forefront. But in the last few months, Musk's support for Donald Trump and courting of other right-wing politicians across the world has caused many of the company's more left-wing customers to have second thoughts. Messaging boards and Tesla forums populated by the car maker's more diehard fans have become full of people questioning whether they should give up their cars. Bumper stickers with slogans such as, "I bought this before Elon went crazy," are selling fast. And perhaps most worrying for the world's richest man, sales of Tesla in many of the company's key markets are falling. "I want to do a bit for the environment and was proud to be an early adopter," said one former owner. "Most of what I read about Elon Musk was about how he was a genius, and I went along with that. I could have got another Tesla, but I couldn't bear to put any more money in that man's pocket." So the protest is now to turn in your Tesla, sell your Tesla. Sheryl Crow, the singer, selling her Tesla and donating the money to NPR. Now, whatever you think about NPR, this is kind of, in my view, a waste of money. NPR is very well funded. I know right now they're Doge and the Trump administration are looking into ways to cut that budget, but NPR and public broadcasting in general, normally gigantic budgets, having the best equipment, with really not providing the best service. But Sheryl Crow has sold her Tesla vehicle and donated the proceeds to National Public Radio. "My parents always said, you are who you hang out with. There comes a time when you have to decide who you are willing to align with. So long, Tesla." Money donated to NPR, which is under threat by President Musk, in hopes that the truth will continue to find its way to those willing to know the truth, proving yet again that NPR is very far left. But see, she's doing, and she's a little late in the game on this, but of course doing the President Musk, trying to get under President Trump's skin. But not as bad as the rhetoric of the man who compared owning a Tesla to a VW Beetle in 1939 Germany, the outrageous ways they try to continue to divide us. But venting at Democrats and fearing Trump, liberal donors are pulling back cash. And they have to be, that's coming from the New York Times, have to be upset. Think of how much money they wasted on the Harris campaign, over about $2 billion, $1.5 billion spent on that campaign. And we saw much of it just being wasted. Demoralized donors are frustrated with Democrats' failings and worried about retribution from the president. Their frugality has left liberal groups struggling to fight the new administration. The demoralization and fear gripping blue America in the early weeks of President Trump's administration have left liberal groups and their allies struggling for cash, hurting their ability to effectively combat the right-wing transformation of the federal government. The small dollar online spigot that powered opposition to the first Trump administration has slowed to a trickle and has shaken liberal voters, withholding their donations. Charitable foundations that have long supported causes like voting rights, LGBTQ equality, and immigration rights are pulling back, devoting time to prepare for expected investigations from the Republican-led Congress. And some of the country's biggest liberal donors have paused giving, frustrated with what they see as a Democrat's lack of vision and worried about retaliation from a vengeful president. Some Democrats say a few of their reliable donors are now openly supporting Mr. Trump, or at least looking to curry favor with him. Fundraising slowdowns are common after a presidential defeat and before marquee midterm races begin fully. But interviews with more than 50 donors, strategists, and leaders of activist organizations show that many Democrats believe this year is different. While Mr. Trump has not taken action against any liberal groups or lawmakers, Democrats worry his frequent threats of retribution during the campaign have led to chilling effects on the charitable foundations and nonprofit advocacy groups that have long been pillars of the country's civil society. So not really, and you've got the lack of a message. You know, Democrats are struggling to kind of get their talking points because so much happens in the Trump administration. So by the time they come up with their talking point, that story's already old news. That's why right now their biggest kind of language that they're using is constitutional crisis, and that President Musk, they continue to do that. And they go through, and this is with the New York Times, talking to some of the donors and why they are pulling back. I think this idea of retribution is kind of laughable. I believe the U.S. is entirely over as the kind of political project that lends itself to your work, wrote Mr. Melhorn, who will not be around to directly experience the consequences of Democrats' defeats because he has moved to Canada. And CNN put together, we'll talk about it when we come back from break, but Democrats confront their powerlessness as Trump flexes his authority. So we'll talk about that as well. We got a couple other things that we need to get to this morning as we are wrapping up. Keep those comments coming in. Keep those waves coming in. If you have anything you'd like to say before the show wraps up, because as I said, we've got about 15 minutes left. We've covered a lot this morning, a lot going on from over the weekend. What did you think of J.D. Vance's speech? What did you think about Donald Trump attending Daytona? That was kind of fun, taking the Beast, the limousine, around the track. And of course, this comes off the heels of the president going to the Super Bowl last week. So kind of interesting. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that as well. But we got to take a short break. Just looking at some of the comments coming in, I'm getting distracted. So stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox.
Your Social Security disability claim has been denied, and you don't understand why. Your physical or emotional problems make it impossible for you to work. I'm Peter Gorton of Lockman & Gorton. Don't give up. Together, we'll file your appeal to give you the best chance to win the benefits you deserve.
For a free consultation, call Lockman & Gorton, toll free 1-800-698-0567.
Are you or someone you love at risk of falling in the home? Did you know 80% of home falls happen in the bathroom? If you are still stepping over a tub to take a shower, please call Bath Planet for a free design service. Our certified design team will take all the measurements and work with you to design a bathroom that never has to sacrifice style for safety. Go with the company that people trust. Bath Planet, 2 locations serving the entirety of the Twin Tiers. Call today.
Anyone, anywhere can record crimes as they happen, and we're going to watch them right here.
He just took his car.
With cameras everywhere, you can run, but you can't hide. Watch iCrime.
The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam, brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. Welcome back as we broadcast live from the Hesselson studio. Some viewer comments. Ken writes in, how does Doge think the Democrats and some Republicans are going to fund their personal wealth if the taxpayer-funded slush funds, which fund the NGOs and special interests, have their funding eliminated? Without that funding, these politicians won't be able to sustain their modest lifestyles. How do they expect Bernie Sanders to survive without 3 homes? Very good point, Ken. Thank you very much. Comment from a different viewer. When or where did Trump say he was going to seek political retribution? They are still trying to scare people, which hasn't changed. When did Trump campaign like the New York Attorney General saying she was running to prosecute Trump? Can you imagine if Trump ever said anything like that? Yeah, they've been trying to push this retribution narrative for quite some time. And even in that piece by the New York Times, talking about people not wanting to donate to liberal causes. Maybe it was because they saw the money completely wasted by Kamala Harris. Maybe it isn't this idea, this fear of retribution. Maybe it is the fact that people don't like just having their money wasted, and that's exactly what we saw from the Harris campaign. Comment from a different viewer. I agree that Biden is the dash between 45 and 47. I wonder what his Disney robot will do when it stands up. I'm glad Trump's Disney robot gets to stand up twice. Hopefully they put a MAGA hat on it. Thank you very much. I did not think about the Disney robot. Comment from Mark. It's great Trump was at Daytona 500. He's the hardest working president and deserves some downtime. Yes, I don't know how he does it. I mean, it's amazing when you look at his schedule and how much he accomplishes. But going back to Democrats, amid Democrat shock and bickering over how much to respond to President Trump is a deeper question rippling through leaders across the Capitol and across the country. How much should they rely on the same institutional and procedural maneuvers they used during the first Trump term? And how much are they willing to wield their own wrecking balls? This is coming from CNN. Democrats remain essentially leaderless. Well, that's interesting because a lot of times they point to Hakeem Jeffries, but he has not done a very good job, has not been a very outspoken. Democrats remain essentially leaderless, with prospective future presidential candidates largely sitting back and allowing others to be the first ones through the buzzsaw of Trump and his cheerleaders. None eager to be the face of the party just yet. They are disconnected with the DNC, where the Obama-era rallying cry of "Yes, we can" became a watered-down slogan of "Yes, we can" for Ken Martin, the largely unknown insider who emerged as the winner of the recent chair race that the party's most prominent figures avoided. Those Democrats left trying to take charge doubt the slower court challenges can keep up with the rapid precision onslaught mounting each day from presidential appointees and associates of Elon Musk. For whatever judgments do come out in their favor, many believe, though few will yet say so publicly, that Trump may soon just start ignoring what he doesn't like, and they'll have no recourse. Trump dismissed this on Tuesday, telling reporters in the Oval Office, "I always abide by the courts." Just days after Vice President J.D. Vance tweeted, "Judges aren't allowed to control the executive's legitimate power," and days before Trump posted on Saturday, "He who saves the country does not violate the line, or violate the law," a line nearly matching one that appeared in a 1970 movie about Napoleon. What hopes Democrats have to counter Trump rests on how now on the mid-March government budget deadline, the first real inflection point for a party that is not just in the minority in the House and Senate, but facing a Republican majority so enthralled to the president that they cheer him on as he rapidly absorbs power from Congress, while they're left holding contrived attempts to visit buildings that Trump and Musk have locked shut while they dismantle operations inside. Representative Hank Johnson, a Georgia Democrat, said, "I'm not going to stand by and support an effort to dismantle our democracy through the budgeting process." Johnson argued that the whole mentality is different than the December shutdown threat, when Democrats also complied, but ultimately provided enough votes to make up for the Republican deflections, even though they got limited concessions. "We got to do everything we can, every tool in the toolbox, to oppose what is actually happening right before our eyes," said Johnson. I remember 8 years ago when skeptical reporters were seeing protests and said, "Oh, come on, it's almost 2 years until the midterms. Will people really stay engaged and energized?" The answer proved to be yes. And in fact, the numbers even grew, said Pennsylvania Representative Brendan Boyle. All right, if they think they're going to win that way. We got to take another short break and then wrap up today's edition of Frankly Speaking. Get those last minute questions and comments in, and we're going to breeze through a few news stories right at the end. Get your take on them. What did you think of the Daytona 500? What did you think of J.D. Vance's speech? I thought that was a fantastic speech, maybe one more forceful than what was expected, but I think that is a good thing. We may talk about that as we wrap up the show. All right, stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox.
Getting the right representation.
It matters.
Hiring a law firm whose focus is motor vehicle accident cases.
It matters.
Hiring a firm with the experience and resources to maximize your recovery.
It matters.
William Mattar is the largest motor vehicle accident firm in New York State. We got that way by winning. If you're hurting a car, it matters who you hire. Call William Mattar. Visit WilliamMattar.com.
Invite you to discover what makes our school community so special, including the fact that everything, top-notch education, housing, healthcare, food, clothing, technology, and much more is provided to our students at no cost to our families. This is thanks to the generosity of our founders, chocolate maker Milton S. Hershey and his wife, Catherine.
Name something with a diamond in it.
Diamondback rattlesnake.
It's in the name. Name a low-calorie food you might make your edible underwear out of.
Salmon.
Watch it weeknights. Share it the next day.
Wild caught Norwegian teriyaki.
Sharing the fun. Weeknights on Family Feud.
7 and 7:30 on Big 5.
The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. Welcome back as we broadcast live from the Hesselson's studio. We've got a couple comments to get to. Ken writes, the huge difference between Biden and Trump's time away from the White House is that when Trump is somewhere else, he is still working hard for the country. Biden was either sleeping at home or falling in the sand on his way to sleep at the beach. Thank you, Ken. Fred writes in, hi, Fred. Good morning, Frank. Well, good morning, Fred. Let me do that. My two new favorite words are deobligate and clawback. Yes, I never thought we'd hear those terms used so much. I hear that the price of homes in the D.C. area is dropping fast as the number of homes for sale has greatly increased. Buying opportunities abound for a lightly used Tesla, too. The level of the swamp really is dropping. As the swamp drains, the scum will float to the top, making it easier to be skimmed off. Thank you, Fred. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth will continually review how to bring back troops kicked out over Biden's vax mandate. The reality is they never should have been done to these men and women. They never should have been forced out for an experimental vaccine. They never should have been denied religious exemption. None of that should have happened. From President Trump to me on down, we recognize it for that to be wrong, that it is, and we will explore even more formal ways to acknowledge that. He said he and his team will continually review the process to make sure troops are reinstated properly. There's some complications around how you apply it, right? It's when did you get out and when and why did you get out? And that's how do you reestablish that? How do you reestablish time and grade? How do you reestablish pay? And so that's taken a little bit longer to put into play because you want to get it right. And there's certain contingencies or scenarios where if you don't plan on how you process it properly, then people could feel left behind. So we're going to continue to review that and make sure it's done properly. Now, Mother Jones, a far-left magazine, published an article expressing concern that all of Joe Biden's gun controls are now at risk under President Trump. The magazine pointed specifically to Trump's February 7, 2025 executive order, which directed Attorney General Pam Bondi to examine gun controls that were put into place from 2021 to 2025. Mother Jones warned that the executive order threatens ghost gun regulations, red flag laws, and more. The magazine then attempted to explain why Second Amendment restrictions on ghost guns are good and defended red flag laws, saying studies in California and elsewhere have shown that these laws, which allow a civil court judge to remove guns temporarily based on evidence that a person poses a threat, are effective for preventing suicide and mass shootings. Mother Jones did not mention that although California was the first state to adopt the red flag law, the law went into effect in 2016, yet California led the nation in active shooter instances in both 2021 and 2023. So Mother Jones concerned that all of Biden's gun controls are at risk under President Trump. All right. Mass resignation marks a new kind of defiance in the second Trump term. The resignation of at least 7 Justice Department officials after refusing to drop charges against an ally of Trump marks the first significant defiance of Trump by federal officials, raising the conflict between the president and his critics to a new level. Now, Andy McCarthy rips Trump for weaponizing the DOJ and the National Review. Under the guise of restoring the integrity and credibility of the Department of Justice, the AG is implementing the Biden DOJ model of conviction first and trial later, if ever. Standing convicted are Trump's principal prosecutorial nemesis, Biden's DOJ special counsel Jack Smith, Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg, and New York Attorney General Letitia James, and therefore guilty by association are any DOJ and FBI personnel who aided and abetted them. In what crimes were not told, only the Bondi will be providing quarterly reports to the White House regarding the progress of the review. Fox News puts it this way: the Trump DOJ brings down sovereign district of New York, saying to these insubordinates, good riddance, for you no longer reign over what you view as the sovereign district of New York. Career federal prosecutors and SDNY are learning the hard way that they report to the Deputy Attorney General, who reports to the Attorney General, who reports to the President. And any other way proves we have a deep state, which too many pretend is a conspiracy theory. That's Mike Davis, and the founder and president of the Article 3 Project. All right. Oh, Isaac Short has a piece that you may want to look for at the New York Post. Trump, the myth buster, wrecking the left's delusion is his superpower. He is, to borrow a cliche, a bull in a china shop. So many of the pieces he's destroyed, though, were not heirlooms, but eyesores. J.D. Vance rightly warns Europeans against the dark cloud of censorship, and guess who freaked out? People looking to censor. No, Vance did Europe a favor with his blunt talk. It can either heed his advice or retreat back into the darkest errors of its past, the tragedy that silly Margaret Brennan inadvertently invoked. All right, that does it for us today. Thank you to everyone who joined us this morning. Thank you for the comments, all the waves. Tomorrow on the program, we'll be joined by Jason Nickerson, the president of John G. Ullman and Associates. So we'll be talking with him about the economy. That is on tomorrow's broadcast, so make sure you join us for that. And join us every weekday morning, starting at 6 a.m. for Frankly Speaking, only on WYDC TV. Big Fox, have a great day, everyone, and we will see you tomorrow morning, bright and early. I look forward to it already.
In today's world, securing your business is more important than ever. Protected with Boss Security's state-of-the-art alarm systems. When seconds matter, trust the experts. Boss Security is proud to safeguard local businesses across the Twin Tiers. Contact Boss Security today.